Hi, Dragoon23 here, and in this video I'll be showing how to edit, make mashups, and rig creature meshes in Alpha Studio. I'm using Alpha Studio version 5.5.2 and Skyrim Special Edition. My general process that works in most creatures is to first check the mesh in pose and in-game. If it works great, you can move on immediately to editing. If not, you'll need to change the skeleton in settings and then reset transformations depending on the mesh. You may need to also manually reset the origins or open the mesh in Blender with a NIF tool add-on in order to get the mesh to look right. So by default, Alpha Studio is set to use the human skeleton. The skeleton is a part of the mesh that tells the game what animations and behaviors to use with the mesh. All creatures and human skeletons in Skyrim have a skeleton attached to them, so a human mesh uses the human skeleton, a mammoth uses a mammoth skeleton, and so on. Because of the human skeleton, Alpha Studio will sometimes try to map the creature mesh onto the human skeleton, which results in distortions. While the messed up NIF might work in game, it's better to export an accurate NIF in case you want to do further editing later, especially if you're doing mashups or rigging. Some creatures will work right out of the box while others need more work. A good way to check is to use the posing function in Alpha Studio. So pose for normal human stuff will show what the outfit looks in game. For creatures, it will only be accurate if you set everything else up correctly. So here's an example with a goat, which works with no additional steps. To go to posing, you go to bones and click the posing if it hasn't been dropped down, and then show pose. So as you can see, there's no distortions, the stomach is fine, the head's not elongated. And if you click show posing, there's no movement of any sort. And here was a simple add-on I made with a sword. And you see under show posing, there is no movement still, so that's fine. An example with the distortion I mentioned will be the vanilla werewolf. So here's a vanilla werewolf. In this screen, it looks fine, but if you go to show posing, it is trying to map the werewolf to the human skeleton. And this will be what it's exporting. As you can see here, this is exactly what I exported it from. Now, this will actually work in game. What will be shown it'll be showing this, but if you're trying to edit it in any way, like trying to stick a sword in his head or anything, it'll give you a problem. And here's what it shows in Blender, see what I mean? So here's the normal one, and here's the importer exporter from Alpha Studio. As you can see, the skeleton is like this one. The skeleton is inside the mesh and not sticking out. Here you can see what looks like a hand and the arms. So that's what's causing this weird distortion here. So as you can imagine, if you're trying to do any type of editing, or like, let's say this one, I stuck a sword into the werewolf's head, like that. But what you're actually seeing is that when you see in game, the head will be over here and the sword will be like a bit of a distance away from the skull. So I'm going to load up the game to show what I mean. So this is what it should look like. The sword is inside the skull. As you can see, the sword is a bit of a distance away from the skull. It's not actually in the skull. Now, to fix this, you're going to need to change the settings in Alpha Studio to the werewolf skeleton rather than human skeleton. So to get the skeletons, you're going to go to your Skyrim data folder and then extract them from the mesh0.bsa. and then you're going to look for the whichever creature skeleton. So it's going to be for vanilla ones, it's going to be under actor, and then whichever creature you're looking for, and then you're looking for the skeleton NIF. So for the bear, they'll be under character assets the skeleton, canine, character assets dog, skeleton. So for the werewolf, it'll be under werewolf beast, character assets, and here's the skeleton. So I've already extracted it here. So to change the skeleton, you're going to File, Settings, and right here under Reference Skeleton, you're going to go to File and the Browse, and you're going to copy and paste that skeleton over. You can rename it to whatever you want. So in this case, I'll name it to Werewolf, and then select it. And then change the root node, if it hasn't been set already, to NPC root. Then OK. Then restart Alpha Studio so that the changes will take place. Go back to posing. You can see the distortion is much better, but it's still not quite accurate. Under show posing, you can see that it's moving in and out a bit. So for other meshes, this distortion might be a bit worse. So to try to fix that, for other meshes, what you want to do is go to Edit, and then Reset Transformations. So what will that do is all these, it will set all these meshes, all these layers of the mesh, and it will default change the origin and settings to 0, so then defaults to right here. So what I mean is right click that, go to properties, and we go to coordinates. Currently its origin is 0, so that means that's where its default picture position is set right now. While something like werewolf teeth, the coordinates are this. So see what happens if I change to what is actually is the default position. And the teeth is sticking out like that. Reset transformations will set it so then all of that will be set to 0. So import it back. So you go to Edit, Reset Transformations. Oops. And see, everything is set to 0. So for some creatures, that's pretty much all you need. But for the werewolf, I chose a werewolf specifically because it's still moving. So to get around that, so that we have an accurate mesh, you go to Properties, and under these coordinates, even though it's 0, change one of them to 1 and unclick this. And then change it back to 0. So that will manually set default it to what we see. And uncheck that. Click OK. So it's this mesh. Now if you go under bones, you can see now that it has stopped moving. So we're going to do that for every single layer. Properties, coordinates, change it by 1, unclick that, OK, change it back. That's all the layers. Now you can see there's no more movement, and now we can edit this mesh. example, it will be if I stuck the sword back on. So a quick demonstration. It's back all the way to the head. Oops. Like so. And then as with any type of editing and you have to weight paint it and partition it out. So in this case, I'm going to paint the whole of the whole sword to the head, so it moves as one solid piece and doesn't distort with the movement of the rest of the body. And I'm changing it to partition 32 so that it matches all the other partitions. For most of the creatures I've seen, it looks like they're all set to partition 32, but as with alphas, just set it to whatever it's set to in the ESP. As you can see, now the sword is in the head, and it matches exactly how it looks in Alpha Studio. So the last edge case is for creatures that won't work regardless if you change the skeleton or reset transformations or manually reset to origins. When I was experimenting with creature meshes, bears were my example since they always resulted in messed up NIFs in-game, but they all of a sudden work properly while recording this video, so I'm just going to include this for completion's sake in case you encounter this. So this last edge case could be due to location error when you need to, which you'll need to use 3D editing software. So this is what the bear looks like. If you try to reset transformations, the eyes will just remain there. So what you do is you'll just first you change the skeleton, and then just move those eyes back, and then reset transformations, and then it'll work from there. But I don't know why it started working, but yeah. So in Blender, let me see, where was I? Oh, yes. So for the last edge cases that it doesn't work, what you want to do is that you need to use the NIF tool add-on, not the PyNifly one. The PyNifly one, I could not get it to work, but the NIF Tools add-on was the one that worked for me. The problem with the PyNif tool add-on is that it only uses the Legendary Edition NIFs, and as Special Edition NIFs won't work with it. So you'll either need to have a copy of Legendary Edition and extract the bare NIFs or whichever one from that, or you can use the Cathedral Asset Optimizer to convert the Special Edition NIFs back into Legendary in order to use it. And then Alpha Studio can automatically convert the Legendary Editions back to Special Edition, so that'll be fine. So once you're in Blender, what you want to do is you go to File, the Import, and this one, the Net Immersive Game Barrel, that will be the NIF tool add-on. The one with Nifly, that's with PyNifly, but you want to use this one. And you're going to use the, as I said, the Legendary Edition of the Bear NIFs. Wait for it to load. Zoom in a little bit. There you go. So I found when I was testing, what fixed it was I had to move these eyes back to the proper origin, and it's because of this, this eye layer right here, that these are set to this, and that was the reason for why they were messed up in game. Um, so to reset them back to 0, you click the eyes, and then Control A, and then you're going to apply the location. Then after that, you export, file export, and you're going to export as a net inverse game bro, because that's a NIF Tools export. And because, see, and then after that, you're going to import it here. And see, would you like Skyrim NIFs to optimize it? So that's because you exported a legendary version. Alpha Studio can automatically convert them back for SE. And there you go. The eyes are back in the skull. So that was the way that I got around when it just for creatures that just did not work regardless if you change anything. But as I said, it works now. Okay. So anyway. Additional problem with this. The NIF tool add-on does not save any alpha layers, so you're going to have to get those back from Skyrim Special Edition. So here's the one that was exported from Blender. Let me go to the body, and here is the original. You can see here, like this is the original Skyrim Edition one. You're going to take this alpha property and export it back into this one that I exported from Blender, and I'll give the alpha properties of the fur back. As you can see, this fur is solid right here. And now it's back. So additional caveat with bears, in case you're getting or other NIFs, where if you import something like a sword and the sword is invisible, it could be because of the this. Here, let me show you what I mean. So let's say I put the sword back into his head like that. Check under settings, show pose. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Now I'm going to weight paint the sword. To the head, as I usually do. And then partition it to 32. So as you can see, the sword is invisible. It's not there. So to fix that, you have to go to the NIF. So click the bare NIF. And here, you're going to need to go to the sword NIFs or whatever you added to it. Click that, don't click it again, and then you want to look for the BS Dismember skin instance. You need to convert that to a knee instance, knee skin instance. So to do that, you click this part, you click the Dismember skin instance of the longsword, right click that, go to block, convert, then knee S, and then knee skin. And do that for however many layers you have added to the bear. And that should make the sword visible. And see, the sword is visible. We're exactly where I put it. And the eyes are fine. And there's no other distortions. Okay. Now, let's say I want to rig an entirely new creature, such as this example I have here. This thing. Let's say I want to rig this creature to the werewolf mesh. Oops, not that one. So this is the one where this is a version of the werewolf where I've already reset transformations and also manually changed all the origins to 0, +1 and -1, 0. So as you can see, there's no movement. Now let's say I want to rig that dragon bone werewolf thing onto this. So for rigging purposes, it's easier if you have one single mesh to um, copy bone's weight off. So in this case, I would try to make this into one mesh by getting rid of any parts that I don't really need. So I just want to make a single mesh, so probably the teeth I don't need. And the eyes are so small, they probably don't need those. But I do need the head, I need that body part, and the legs and the arms. So I'm going to merge all of those into one. Using merge geometry. Now, if I did it this way, it's going to say like it's going to give a bunch of error messages like the alpha property mismatch or base texture mismatch and partition errors and stuff like that. So what you want to do is that you want to convert that all into so they all using the same alpha mesh and all the same texture. So to do that, go to properties, right click, and then copy from shape. Let's say I want to copy from the 1, 0, so I'll just copy from that. Properties, copy from that too. And if it looks funky, that's fine, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to make the one mesh to copy bones weight off as our reference. So merge geometry, try that again. The alpha properties and like those. Okay, let's get rid of the alpha properties. So you go to this, right click properties, and then remove the transparency. That's your alpha property. Do that for both of these. And no errors found, so we're going to merge all of those. And now we have one mesh that we can use to set as the reference. And now I can drag in this mesh that I want to use. This one, I want to rig it to the werewolf. And I can copy bones weight off it. So I'm just going to make this a large number. But you can edit you can fix the weights as you want. I'm just see, I'm trying to get all of them masked. Okay, all the weights. Okay, so all the bone bits are weighted, and now I need to change the partitions to 32. And as you can see, now I have rigged a completely new mesh to the werewolf, the werewolf skeleton, and it works relatively fine. There might be some issues with the hip bone. Let's see. Yeah, there's some issues with the hip bone, so you want to change maybe the so there is some issues with the hip bone, so that's when you have to try to manually edit search what 10. So then they probably just want to, oh, so the thigh, the thigh was affecting this part. So that's when you'll have to start manually editing the weight paint to get it closer, so you don't have those weird movements of the hip bone. But yeah, that's how you rig it. So you merge geometry, so you have one mesh to copy bone weight off, and then after that you copy bone weight off, and then manually edit the weight paint from there. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and yeah.